In this video, the laid-back head captain of the Gotei 13 is facing off against the strongest Shinigami. Shunsui Kyoraku has the terrifying ability to manifest children's games into reality. Along with this, he can transform battlefields with his Bankai, as he forces his opponents into a deadly theater. In the other corner, we have Kenpachi Zaraki, the captain of the 11th Division. He's a man so powerful that his own body threatens to tear itself apart when he's unleashing the full strength of his Bankai. Shunsui has control over unpredictability. He's a tactical genius, along with his hacks abilities that allow him to rewrite how battles unfold. When it comes to Kenpachi, it's pretty simple. He's going to cut whatever's in front of him. It's the terrifying raw power that he possesses, as when he's pushed to his absolute limits, he's able to overcome and cut anything. This is frankly a matchup that Bleach fans have debated endlessly, and today we're going to be settling it once and for all. By the end of this video, you'll understand why one of these combatants is going to walk away victorious in nearly every conceivable scenario of this fight. Now we need to talk about the ground rules of the matchup. The battlefield is going to take place on neutral ground where neither of the combatants have an environmental advantage. No outside interference is allowed. It's purely a 1 versus 1 fight, testing everything that both combatants have developed through centuries of combat experience. Both characters will enter at their respective peaks from the 1000-year Blood War arc. Shunsui wields his Zanpakuto Katen Kyokotsu along with its Bankai Katen Kyokotsu Karamatsu Shinju, with all 4 acts fully at his disposal. When it comes to Kenpachi, this will be the version of him after his training with Unohana, with the subconscious limiters permanently removed. This means he's wielding Nozarashi with its devastating Shikai form, and he's capable of activating its unnamed Bankai, which transforms him into a literal demon of destruction. The win conditions are simple. It's death or complete incapacitation, and neither is able to retreat or run away. So let's go over each of the characters. Shunsui is one of the oldest Shinigami within the Soul Society. He's trained directly under Head Captain Yamamoto, being one of the first individuals who had graduated from the Shinigami Academy alongside Yushiro Ukitake. His laid-back demeanor conceals absolute ruthlessness. During the Fake Karakura Town arc, he explicitly tells Love Aikawa that captains don't have time to play the good guy. When honor conflicts with victory, Shunsui chooses victory without hesitation. He closely follows the philosophy of the legendary samurai Miyamoto Musashi, who cares if you stab someone from behind or kill your opponent while they're traveling to your agreed place of battle. For over 1000 years, his pragmatic survival instincts have been honed, and they guide every decision that he makes. He demonstrates some truly impressive feats during his battle against Coyote Stark, the first ranking Espada. This Espada was so powerful that his presence had killed nearby hollows, and Shunsui defeated him using only his Shikai. He deliberately withheld his Bankai against the Primera Espada, meaning his victory came without accessing his full arsenal of abilities. He was able to break Aizen's defensive barrier with his Shikai, placing his offensive capability at staggering levels. The Bleach character databook Unmasked confirms that Shunsui's Shikai power actually surpassed Stark's full power. Then there's the Lil Barrow fight. Shunsui's Bankai decapitated and detonated the head of a Sternritter who possessed complete intangibility through the X-axis. Lil only survived through divine resurrection, granted by his status as the closest being to a god among the Sternritter. When Shunsui activated his Bankai within Varavelt, everyone who was present felt it. The atmosphere itself transformed into his very own theater. His Shikai Katen Kyokotsu forces reality to conform to children's games. Anyone who falls within the range of it must obey the rules or face lethal consequences. Bushogoma creates devastating wind blades. Taka Oni amplifies damage from elevated strikes. Kage Oni weaponizes shadows, allowing attacks from any shadow while preventing counterattacks when Shunsui hides within them. Iro Uni creates color-based combat, where declaring and striking specific colors determines damage scaling. Daruma-san functions as a lethal red light green light game, and Kagekuri creates after images through Reiatsu manipulation while opponents are stuck striking decoys. His Bankai Katen Kyokotsu Karamatsu Shinju manifests as a theatrical play that unfolds in 4 unavoidable acts. Act 1 shares all wounds equally between Shunsui and his opponent. Act 2 manifests black spots causing inflicting persistent unhealing bleeding on whoever attacks first. Attack 3 traps both fighters in an inescapable ocean, draining spiritual pressure until someone drowns. The final act wraps a thread around the opponent's throat before detonating their head. This worked on Lil Barrow's intangible light form, proving the ability bypasses conventional defenses entirely. According to Yamamoto, even when he was younger, Shunsui possessed an eye for seeing the true character of anyone that he meets. He suspected Aizen was hiding something long before others caught on. His battlefield intelligence operates on multiple layers, as he's constantly analyzing opponents for patterns and weaknesses. He's a master of Kido who's capable of casting spells up to the 90s range. He's also a Shumpo master who impressed even Yamamoto, and he possesses insane levels of Reiatsu that's hard to match even by his peers or predecessors, and this is according to the official Bleach character databook Masked. This now brings us to Kenpachi Zaraki, who embodies everything that is terrifying about the Gotei 13. He's the leader of the 11th division, which specializes in combat. Kenpachi originates from the lawless 80th district of Rukongai called Zaraki. Without any formal training whatsoever, he had become so powerful that Yobak had designated him as one of the 5 special war powers. These are individuals who are capable of altering the Quincy War's outcome. His backstory contains one of Bleach's most fascinating reveals. As a child, Kenpachi was already stronger than Yachiru Unohana, the first Kenpachi and the most diabolical criminal in the history of the Soul Society. When he fought her, he experienced fear for the very first time. He feared winning. His subconscious mind recognized that going all out would kill Unohana, meaning that he'd lose the only person capable of giving him a truly satisfying fight. His brain created a psychological thermostat, automatically limiting his power to maintain challenge levels. This became his default operating mode for centuries. His training with Unohana in Muken was designed to shatter these limitations. She repeatedly brought him to the brink of death, healing him after each near-fatal encounter. Every resurrection removed another layer of subconscious restriction. This entire process recalibrated his mind's power regulation system under the most extreme stress imaginable. When its authentic power finally reawakened, Unohana's death became inevitable. The boy who almost killed her all those years ago became an adult with the same raw potential but vastly more experienced. Post-training feats demonstrate Kenpachi's absurd power scaling. Against Gremi Thermu, he demolished a meteor larger than the Vandenreich Citadel. With a single swing of his Shikai, he consistently had the upper hand against a Sternritter whose power was literally imagination itself. When Gremi tried to imagine Kenpachi's own strength, the contradiction proved fatal, because Kenpachi's power exceeded what the visionary could comprehend. His Zanbakuto Nozarashi, meaning weather-beaten, possesses tremendous attack power capable of cutting through virtually anything. This includes space itself. When he transforms into his Bankai, he dons red skin, black markings and horns. The power increase is frankly so huge that he cut in half the giant form of Gerard Valkyrie, a Sternritter who was overwhelming Kenpachi's Shikai. But this power comes at a price. His body cannot fully contain the energy released from his Bankai, causing his own arm to tear apart from the strain. Kenpachi's combat intelligence operates through instantaneous pattern recognition rather than accumulated knowledge. Despite lacking formal training in Zanjutsu, he eventually outskilled Unohana during their deathmatch. This is a woman who knew over 8,000 different sword styles. His reflexes and instincts allow him to fight even after having all main senses removed, as he adapts through touch alone. We see this when he fights against Kaname Tozen during the Soul Society arc. The Bleach databooks and light novels consistently portray Kenpachi as a combat monster. During the Can't Be Your Own World light novels, which are set 6 months after the 1000-Year Blood War arc, Kenpachi proves more than a match for Hikone while using only his Shikai without his eye patch. Hikone is an incredibly powerful Soul King candidate possessing the powers of a Fullbring, Hollow, Quincy, Shinigami, and Human. He also completely obliterated the legendary Hollow Ikomikidomoe after it regained its true name and power. So Kenpachi one-shotted an enemy that had defeated a younger Yamamoto. Now this is where things get really interesting, as we'll be comparing their abilities. Shunsui's techniques don't rely on raw power differential. potentials. His Shikai forces everyone within range to obey the rules of children's games regardless of their strength. His Bankai manifests curse-like effects that bypass physical defenses entirely, meaning durability becomes irrelevant. Kenpachi's power system is straightforward on the other hand, as it relies on amplification. Remove the limiters, activate Shikai, push to Bankai, and overwhelm through pure destructive output. Against most opponents, this approach works devastatingly, but Shunsui isn't most opponents. Some fans argue that Kenpachi's superior Reiatsu should negate Shunsui's abilities, citing the well-known Bleach principle that massive spiritual pressure differences can nullify Hack's abilities. Everybody knows the Aizen vs Siphon example, it gets brought up quite a lot. However, the comparison misses crucial context. The Reiatsu gap required for complete negation is astronomical, the difference between a captain and a transcendent being. Kenpachi and Shunsui exist in roughly the same tier of spiritual pressure. So yeah, Aizen negating Siphon's Nigeki Kisatsu is very different to Kenpachi negating Shunsui's Shikai or Bankai. More importantly, if Reiatsu alone could negate Shunsui's Bankai, Lil wouldn't have lost his head despite the X-axis granting complete immunity to physical attacks. The only reason he survived was Divine Resurrection, which is tied to his Shrift ability. Kenpachi possesses no such divine protection. He is a Shinigami, albeit an extraordinarily powerful one, without any immunity to supernatural effects that bypass physical combat. Shunsui's games don't manifest as physical attacks that can be overpowered, they alter the rules that govern over the battlefield. When it comes to raw physical stats, there's no denying Kenpachi holds an undeniable advantage here. His cutting power lets him slice through space itself. His physical durability allowed him to continue fighting with fist-sized holes through his chest, deep lacerations, and even severed limbs. Shunsui isn't weak by any measure. He clashed physically with Stark, matched his wolf blades, and demonstrated enough force to crack Aizen's barriers like I mentioned before. He's a dual-wielding master swordsman trained by Yamamoto himself, and his Zanjutsu is so incredible that he has perfect synchronization while switching dominant hands mid-combat in order to confuse opponents. In terms of their demonstrations of speed, they operate at comparable levels. They both pretty much have faster-than-light combat capabilities during their respective 1000-year Blood War arc fights. Shunsui's Daruma-san technique allows him to travel along Reiatsu trajectories, essentially teleporting while leaving decoys behind. His after-image creation fooled even Lil Barrow's enhanced perception. However, technique favors Shunsui though, due to his formal training under Yamamoto combined with his centuries of practical experience. Kenpachi operates on pure instinct with minimal formal framework. His single day of kendo training was cut short by the Central 46 out of fear of his potential. This means Shunsui can read Kenpachi's straightforward attack patterns, while Kenpachi would struggle with Shunsui's unpredictable game-based combat. When we're looking at intelligence and strategy, this category does reveal a major gap. Shunsui's battlefield intelligence does operate on multiple layers at the same time. He analyzes opponents for patterns and weaknesses, while executing complicated game-based techniques. When he was fighting Stark, he deliberately forced situations that limited the Espada's advantages. Against the elite Schutzstaffel member Lil Barrow, despite facing unbeatable intangibility, Shunsui identified that his opponent's confidence created predictable behaviors which were exploitable through his Bankai. Shunsui will resort to any measures to secure a victory, whether if it's attacks from behind, employing feints, psychological manipulation. All of these tools are within his arsenal. Kenpachi's intelligence, on the other hand, is very different. Despite lacking formal training, his fight IQ reaches remarkable levels during combat. It's no surprising that some people mistake him for having Saiyan blood, as he recognized that Gremmy's visionary only works on one target at a time and that effects disappear if attention gets diverted. He correctly identified that Gin and Tozen were the only captains that were afraid to die. His instincts let him exploit weaknesses in opponents' techniques through mid-battle adaptation. He is the critical difference. Kenpachi doesn't plan, he reacts. His approach involves assessing threat levels, applying appropriate force, and increasing power if he needs to. Against a tactical genius who weaponizes unpredictability, reactive combat becomes very problematic. Shunsui would control the pace of the fight through his games, while Kenpachi would struggle to adapt to rules that he has never encountered before. In terms of durability and stamina, both of them possess superhuman levels that are way beyond ordinary Shinigami. Kenpachi has fought with injuries that would kill anyone else multiple times. His spiritual pressure is so dense that it creates passive defense against weaker attacks. Shunsui has continued fighting despite large holes shot through his torso during the 1000-year Blood War arc. However, stamina does favor Kenpachi in extended fights. His combat style relies on him accumulating damage, which helps him to become stronger. Each fight pushes him to new heights, but Shunsui's Bankai isn't designed for extended battles. It's designed to end fights via unavoidable progression. The key durability question is whether if Kenpachi can survive Shunsui's Bankai acts. Act 1's shared wounds become problematic because Kenpachi's attacks would harm himself equally. The incurable bleeding of Act 2 doesn't require physical force to inflict. And when it comes to Act 4, it's a instant kill head detonation. Now, I skipped Act 3 for a reason because it deserves special attention here. This is where Kenpachi fans mount their strongest argument for him beating Shunsui. The drowning mechanism drains spiritual pressure from both parties until one exhausts themselves. On paper, Kenpachi's superior Reiatsu reserves should let him outlast Shunsui in this endurance contest. Here's the counterpoint that many overlook. The water doesn't simply favor whoever has more Reiatsu within a vacuum. It drains both participants simultaneously while also freezing their resolve. An elite level Sternritter, whose raw spiritual pressure rivals Squad 0 members, still found himself drowning in Act 3. If pure Reiatsu superiority would negate this act, then he wouldn't have been affected at all. The mechanic appears to equalize the drain rate rather than simply measuring whose tank is bigger. More importantly than this, Kenpachi would have to survive Acts 1 and 2 first. The accumulated damage from shared wounds and incurable bleeding would significantly drain his stamina before Act 3 even begins. Shunsui designed this Bankai knowing that he'd have to survive it himself, meaning the progression accounts for the user's endurance limitations. Kenpachi's so insane that you could realistically imagine him carrying his own severed head in one hand while continuing to fight Shunsui. While the image is hilarious, Bleach has established that head destruction is fatal for beings without divine resurrection, and unfortunately Kenpachi possesses no such ability. Let's now talk about their ultimate abilities. Kenpachi's is of course his Bankai. The raw output of this transformation exceeds most metrics within Bleach. While as powerful as this form is, it comes with an equal amount of limitations. Kenpachi becomes mindless. He's unable to differentiate between friend and foe. He fights without regard for his own well-being. After cutting Gerard in half, he immediately attempted to attack Hitsugaya and Byakuya without warning. Even more critically, his body cannot fully contain the power. His arm began tearing itself apart after sustained usage. This self-destructive element becomes a huge liability in any prolonged fight. Shunsui's Bankai does operate very differently. He forces his opponents into a theatrical play where each act progresses towards an inevitable death. The clash potential between Kenpachi's Bankai and Shunsui's Bankai does create an interesting dynamic. If Kenpachi activates Bankai before Shunsui establishes his play, then his Berserker Fury might land devastating blows, but once Shunsui activates Katen Kyokotsu Karamatsu Shinju, the outcome becomes nearly predetermined. The 4 acts proceed regardless of Kenpachi's power level because they don't function through conventional attack mechanics. What about the unexpected wildcards for this fight? Well, Shunsui's Bankai has a critical weakness. He cannot use it if allies are nearby because the effects are indiscriminate. In a pure one-on-one fight, this limitation disappears. Then you have Kenpachi's track record against hacks-based opponents, and this provides some critical insight for the matchup. His fight against Pernida, the left arm of the Soul King, ended disastrously. Despite his overwhelming raw power, Kenpachi was essentially dismantled by Pernida's compulsory ability. He had to rip off his own twisted arm just to avoid being completely torn apart. Pernida's hack's abilities were just too much for Kenpachi's pure instinct-driven combat style. The Pernida fight demonstrates a pattern. When Kenpachi faces opponents whose abilities operate outside of normal power differentials, his straightforward forward approach becomes a liability. He charges in, assumes his strength will overcome any obstacle, and gets punished for it. Shunsui's abilities function in a similar manner. They don't care how strong you are, they care whether if you can survive their specific mechanics. Kenpachi's berserker state in Bankai removes his ability to strategize or recognize danger, meaning that he would not retreat even if somehow surviving the initial acts of Shunsui's Bankai. His instinct is pure aggression against the opponent who weaponizes that very aggression against the attacker through shared wounds and bleeding. This becomes self-defeating behavior. The mental aspect of Shunsui's Bankai does deserve attention. The reiatsu that he exudes creates a dark, gloomy atmosphere, causing all those that are within the range of its effects to feel sensations that are similar to chills. This psychological pressure affected even the most powerful Sternritter. I've yet to see Kenpachi be phased anything, so whether if he's going to be impacted by this is debatable, but the freezing resolve component of Act 3 explicitly targets mental fortitude alongside physical endurance. Some fan discussions mention that Kenpachi might cut through Shunsui's games. His Shikai can cut through space itself after all, but Shunsui's abilities don't manifest as physical objects to be severed. They alter the very rules of reality. Just as you cannot cut through the concept of gravity, you are unable to cut through a rule. So let's be real. On paper, this does look like a battle of monsters, but if we're talking raw physical stats, Kenpachi takes this every day of the week. He has the durability, the edge and speed, and the destructive output which has earned him the title of the strongest Shinigami from Gerard Valkyrie himself. Bleach does consistently show us that raw power doesn't always determine the winner. Look at Aizen losing to Ichigo or Yamamoto failing to Yhwach. Isn't going to fight Kenpachi's style of a battle. He's too smart for that. He knows that he cannot match the demon in a straight up brawl, which is why he has to weaken him with his Shikai and then drag him into the Bankai. I see the fight unfolding like this. Shunsui activates his Bankai and suddenly Kenpachi's physical advantages become his worst nightmare. Any damage Kenpachi inflicts is reflected right back onto him. For a berserker who tanks hits to deal damage, this is a terrible start. Act 2, an incurable disease drains him. No amount of durability counters a plague. Act 3, the watery abyss. Now Kenpachi fans love to argue that his superior reiatsu lets him outlast Shunsui here, but the ability drains both fighters until one runs out of resolve. Act 4, it's pretty much a wrap. A thread snaps and Kenpachi's head is detonated. Like I said earlier, without divine regeneration or immortality, which Kenpachi lacks, he's going to die. The only way that I see Kenpachi winning this is if he blitzes Shunsui with Bankai immediately, but given Shunsui's superior combat experience and willingness to fight dirty, he is not going to let that happen. He'll trigger his Bankai early and just end it. So I did run a poll on the community tab of the channel where I asked who would win in a 1v1 fight. We got over 35,000 votes, with 57% of you thinking that Shunsui would win and 43% of you thinking that Kenpachi would win. It's nice to say that I do agree with the results of this poll, and I definitely agree that Shunsui takes it. He would beat Kenpachi in a one-on-one fight. So we have reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What are your thoughts about Kenpachi versus Shunsui? Do you think there's a way for Kenpachi to win this fight before he's trapped in Shunsui's Bankai? Where do you stand on the hacks versus stats debate when it comes to Bleach? Do you think Kenpachi's spiritual pressure is that high enough that it's going to negate Shunsui's Shikai or Bankai? If there is anything that I've forgotten to mention that could turn the tide of this battle, then let me know by continuing the discussion in the comments. And lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I look forward to seeing you in my next one.
A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.